Today we are going to talk about the elements of the curriculum. Particularly, we are going to be continuing to look at curriculum content and also learning experiences. So, as a curriculum worker or a teacher, after selecting our curriculum content, we now have to focus on how we organize our content. We know that organization is very important. And when we talk about organizing the curriculum, this is usually dependent on the curriculum design. However, regardless of the design, vertical and horizontal organization must be considered. And we are going to be talking some more about vertical and horizontal organization. We are going to be zeroing on two concepts, the continuity and sequencing when we talk about vertical alignment, and we'll be looking at integration and scope when we talk about horizontal alignment. This diagram here gives a better picture of how it works. Now, vertical organization has to do with arranging curricular data as we move up from the grade levels from one level to another to ensure that the curriculum content develop in a spiral manner or spirally. Now, in our foundational mathematics classes, we would have learnt about vertical lines and that they run up and down. In the same way, as students move up in their grade levels, the content we should ensure that the content, if revisited, are looked at in a more complex manner as the students meet them in the different grades. But we're going to focus on two concepts, sequencing and reiteration. So here goes. Sequencing. When we talk about sequencing, we know that a sequence is a particular order in which related things follow each other. And so there are many ways that we can order our curriculum content, and these are just a few. We can organize our content in terms, sequence our content in terms of moving from the known facts to the unknown. And this one is very popular. So let's look at our living with COVID-19 curriculum that we began to draft in our last session. If we were to sequence our curriculum content in this way, we could consider talking about flu viruses, because persons are familiar with flu viruses, and then work our way to the unknown in talking about the SARS virus, COVID-19 virus. We can also organize our curriculum by looking at starting from the concrete. And we know when we talk about concrete, we are talking about those ideas that exist in physical form. So we work from concrete to abstract. Looking back at the living with COVID-19 curriculum, we could talk about maybe dieting and food. That is something that we can see, exist in physical form foods, and move our way to the abstract concept of resilience and what it means to recover quickly from difficulties. That's an abstract concept. We can also sequence our curriculum by moving from whole to part, moving from simple to complex, moving from specific facts to generalizations. And this is what we call the inductive method. So back to the living with COVID-19 curriculum, we could perhaps move from this talking about or begin to talk about the specifics of vaccinations and how it works and how it impacts the body in general, and move now to making more generalized assumptions about what this would mean for economic stability maybe. And we can also do the opposite of inductive method, the inductive method, by moving from generalizations to specific facts and that is the deductive method. We can also sequence in terms of chronological point, moving from one chronological point to the other. Perhaps if we are looking at the Living with COVID-19 curriculum, we could perhaps begin in 2003 when the SARS virus first broke out in Asia and work our way to 2019, what we are experiencing now as a pandemic. So that's sequencing. We can sequence or order our content in many ways. We also have to consider under vertical alignment the concept of reiteration or continuity. And we spoke about the spiral curriculum in our second session. And so if contents are being revisited in the curriculum, we have to ensure that when students meet them for another time, a second or third time, that they are done in greater depth. And Jerome Bruner introduced the concept of the spiral curriculum. So when we talk about vertical alignment, we talk about reiteration and sequencing. Now, as it relates to horizontal organization, back to our mathematics foundation, we know that vertical lines run across from left to right. And so we are talking now about the side-by-side arrangement of curriculum elements, or the concepts, the themes, the topics in the curriculum. This now refers to the arrangement of these topics in such a way that the relationships among the topics are clearly seen by the students even as they move across subject areas and different grades. So take for example here, we have a science curriculum, we have a math curriculum, and we have a technology. And for a student in grade 6, for argument's sake, they are looking at weather and climate in science and natural disasters and so on. The teacher or the curriculum worker can organize the curriculum in such a way that students look at weather and climate in terms of natural disasters in science, but they also touch on statistics and probability in terms of collecting data on natural disasters and the different countries, something that they would have learned in mathematics. And also the technology, they could look at technological tools like Google Earth and virtual simulations that can be used to help in measuring atmospheric conditions and predicting when and if some of these natural disasters can occur. So for horizontal organization, we focus on two concepts, scope and integration. And we know when we talk about scope, we're talking about width, the breadth of the curriculum. How much content do we introduce to our learners at any given point? And integration, of course, we have met this concept before, the concept of integration, where we look at connections and linkages across the curriculum, enabling the individual or the learner to see the knowledge as a unified whole. So horizontal organization, we look at scope and also integration. And we met these concepts already in our previous sessions. Now, just as a checklist, when we are organizing our content, we need to think about vertical organization. And these two things, what are the two things that the two concepts that we must ensure that we check off on our checklist? Well, if you answered sequencing and reiteration or spiraling, you are correct. What must we think about when we talk about horizontal organization? If you answered integration and scope, then you are correct. Now, class, you are going to find a partner, any partner in class, and you are going to examine the curriculum guide from your area of specialization. I want you to look particularly at how the principles are sequenced. I want you to look at the concept of spiraling. If you see that concepts are revisited, I want you to explain briefly how differently are they treated. Do you see any level of complexity as they are revisited? I want you also to look at how can improvements be made in terms of organizing the content to enable learning. And I want you to put this briefly in a voice note or use the audio feature in the Moodle to give me your responses. And you know that in Moodle you have less than 3 minutes to make the recording, so work within that time. Thank you for listening.